America's Next Top Model documentary. I think it's called Reality Check. Yeah, there we go. It's a three-part series on Netflix, and kind of wild. I'm trying to like figure out what my thoughts are on it. Um, I definitely am someone who grew up watching America's Next Top Model. In fact, I was thinking about it because I think they said the show started back in 2003. And when they were going over the first season, I was like, oh, maybe I didn't start watching until the second season, actually. But that means I started watching this show at the age of 14. So, as a middle schooler, I was watching this craziness. And I'm going to kind of get back to that, maybe, of how that affects a young person watching that. But I kind of think overall, very much so, not taking it in a very negative way. I and being generous, I do think this documentary kind of does a good job balancing saying things went too far and this was bad and we wouldn't do this nowadays, and um, kind of apologizing while also at the same time really trying to get across that in a lot of ways, um, this was a pretty progressive show for its time. It did include diversity, not just with race, but with weight, and that Tyra was attempting to like break down kind of stereotypical things that were happening in the modeling industry and subvert expectations, but you could also tell she was getting a lot of pushback from the studios and just the industry as a whole. So it was kind of interesting to hear the different sides of like, oh, Tyra had this idea, she assembled the team and really wanted to go for it, but then also kind of did some bad things to nice people and kind of took advantage of the girls, or it's kind of like humiliating them. I really liked hearing from people who were in the show. Danielle, I don't know if you remember, she's the one that had the gap tooth, and they were like, you have to close your gap, you have to close your gap. And at first she refused, but then she did end up going to the dentist, having the procedure done, and it was so crazy to see her interview now, because I was like, oh my gosh, this girl is gorgeous. She looks the exact same as she did on America's Next Top Model. She must have an amazing career. And it was so disappointing to hear that, like, almost none of them had careers after the show. And probably, according to Danny on the show, because of winning America's Next Top Model, doors were kind of closed to her that would have otherwise been open. So that kind of sucked to hear as well. But yeah, I don't know. I kind of really hope that some producers and casting directors and people do see the documentary and go, oh, we should have them now. Because what they were kind of trying to say is that reality TV sort of had a stigma back then that it doesn't hold now, especially in the age of social media where everyone's an influencer and everyone has a platform. And, now you would want your reality TV star to be promoting your thing because they have a built-in audience. Whereas when this aired, like I said, this started back in 2003, serious television and serious, the runway shows and the print magazines wouldn't have wanted to be associated with kind of, Danny called it like the redheaded stepchild celebrity of a reality TV show. So that was kind of interesting. I did kind of wonder about that. The same thing with American Idol. Like, you've got a couple of breakout stars, obviously, like Kelly Clarkson. People did do things from that show, but I do remember hearing about American Idol that you were caught up contractually, and there was just a lot of things that you couldn't do because you won. So I do wonder how much of that kind of happened with America's Next Top Model as well. Let me see. I'm just kind of looking at my notes. I loved seeing Shannon again. She was the one that they were like, "You're just all teeth," and she has this big smile, and she was so fun. Her energy is still great. Loved seeing her. Um, Gosh, they got into Shandy. Shandy was the one that they had this whole storyline about how she had a long term relationship. She had a boyfriend and she came to the show. And then when they went to Milan, they were drinking and she ended up cheating on her boyfriend. It's like what the story said. And then when you get into it, um, it's really crazy that that's essentially what played out. It was sexual assault. Like it's kind of insane. Um, they keep talking about because they had Shandy there for the interview for the documentary, and you can tell she's still talking about it as if she did something wrong. And I don't know, it's kind of heartbreaking to watch because you could see it's taken a toll on her over the years. Because they made her out to be this like cheating scumbag. She said people in New York would literally come up to her and be like, "You slut, you're a terrible person." And in reality, it was like she was blackout drunk, and none of the producers or cameramen or anyone stepped in to like stop this from happening. And not only did they not stop it from happening, they then like aired it. And then not only did they air it, they had her back on Tyra Banks's show to talk about it when she said specifically she'd never watched it because it was like triggering and terrible for her. And then they played it again. And then in this documentary right now, we're talking about it again as if it was like, oh well, yeah, that made for good TV. And I don't know, something about that just really struck me as very strange. But you could tell because they had another girl that was talking about kind of unwanted attention from a male model as well, and they didn't totally get into it, but they kept saying like a product of its time, and these things happened back then or were the norm back then, especially for the industry. And I do kind of felt, I mean, I kind of felt like, well, yeah, I mean, this was before the Me Too movement, and her trying to stick up for herself and pause the photo shoot, like, didn't have a good effect at all. And just really goes to show you that, like, no one had your back in this industry. I know it was the same for the acting industry. Like, if you were uncomfortable, you just couldn't speak up or you lost the job. It's unfortunately, I think, kind of still like that. Supposedly, with the Me Too movement, we've got intimacy coordinators now. Like, things are supposedly better, but I do think in terms of job security, like, yeah, you can't make waves or you don't get the job. So, kind of didn't like that, but also I appreciated them showing, okay, if you're looking behind the scenes of just how a production works and how you need to get ratings, studio heads and people above Tyra and Ken are going to be the ones making those decisions to kind of forward the story and the ratings along that don't quite make sense. Because even Tyra, they were all talking about how like it got so out of hand. It went from, okay, we're trying to teach these people how to be models, to what kind of crazy challenge can we do now to keep audiences hooked. The one that I did not know, I must have stopped watching before this. Like I said, this started, I was in middle school, and then to go on for 24 seasons, I mean, I don't know when I stopped watching, but they were talking about the firing of um, the Jays and Nigel Barker, the photographer. I didn't even remember that happening. That was crazy, and they said they did it pretty much probably just to try to make ratings better for the drama of it. And I, excuse me, I just thought that was insane because it started out so nicely where it was talking about it was talking about how Tyra herself had brought J. Manuel and Miss J on, and then it was the studio's decision that they needed a straight white male, and that was where Nigel came in as a photographer. But these three were huge characters on the show, and they were all judges, and the way they all described being let go as just like there was no conversation, and it was just like one day you're in, one day you're out, and we're not talking about it. And then you've got the, pan over to Tyra, and she's like, yeah, I think they still think that was my fault, and like it actually came from the higher ups. So that was kind of interesting. There was some stuff that Tyra was saying that I did believe her on, and there was still some that she was clearly trying to save her image for. The whole thing starts out by saying, I think she was kind of deciding to address it simply because of 2020. And she said, like, everyone was in lockdown, everyone was in quarantine, and they started streaming the show again. This is also during the time of Black Lives Matter movement was really gaining traction, and people were getting canceled right and left on the internet and really being held accountable for like anything they'd done or said in the past. So she was like, oh, we're looking at America's Next Top Model through a very different lens. It was very clear that people were going after her during this time, during 2020. So I think that's kind of where this documentary came from. And that's what they say at the very beginning. She's like, this um, was seen through a different lens than when it was made. And then at the end, she kind of gets. This is where she sounds the most disingenuous to me, because she's like, we all need to be held accountable. And if this happens to you, I hope you don't run from the opportunity to correct your mistakes. And it just, I don't know. A lot of the things she said before that I thought were sincere, and I believed her, and it was exciting to go along for the ride. And then some other things where she's trying to like save face. I don't know. And it was very sad because Miss J had a stroke and like couldn't speak, still can't walk, and Tyra hasn't visited Miss J still. That just seems so strange. And of course, you don't know the behind the scenes of shows like that or anything, but let me see. I've got a couple other notes. Just, yeah, that was sad. I did think it was interesting that a lot of the girls did say, for as like crazy as it was, and they did get into like some things that were obviously just not okay. Many of them said it still was a good opportunity for them, which I thought was interesting. It wasn't like, that's why I said it was like at least kind of nicely balanced, in that they could say these terrible things happen, but even the people who were like, this really wasn't okay and was just like a bear being poked for reality TV, they still felt like they came from backgrounds where this was their only opportunity, so they didn't necessarily regret doing the show, which I think was maybe a little helpful to hear after watching the whole thing and being like, oh gosh, was this just a terrible train wreck that should have never happened. But I mean, some people like gained confidence or got opportunities, or it was at least nice to hear that not everyone regretted it. Joni and her teeth, she was like, I would have never been able to pay for that. So even though it's still not necessarily correct, like orthodontically, she still says like, well, it's still nice because I wouldn't have been able to afford that if it weren't for the show taking care of the surgery. So I think Joni had a really good perspective on it. She was much more positive than I think I would have been in that situation. But yeah, I thought overall it was kind of interesting. It almost kind of made me want to rewatch the show, which of course the whole point. No, it was crazy. Tyra was like, you don't even know what we have in store for cycle 25. And I was like, girl, you're gonna relaunch this, and that's the whole reason we're doing this documentary, is because you're telling us that America's Next Top Model is coming back for cycle 25, and you have an ice cream brand? What? So all of that was kind of crazy. If you guys watching have any thoughts, please let me know. Because yeah, I just thought it was interesting to revisit. I guess I'll say it that way. I realized watching it back that I didn't necessarily remember a lot of specifics, but I did, like, certain things stick out, though we were all rooting for you. Of course, everybody knows that one. The photo shoot with like the tarantula, I remember that. The photo shoot with when they're 6 feet under and they're the 7 deadly sins, totally remember that one. So there are definitely certain points that stick out from the show, but overall when they were showing all of the footage, I was like, oh, maybe I don't remember as specifically as much as I thought I did. But I did like seeing Whitney. She was the first. She won. She was the first plus size model they had, which she was a size 6. So I'm so happy that I never developed an eating disorder or anything. But it is amazing that growing up in the 90s, 2000s culture, you just have all these rail thin people, and then they're being told on the show that they're still too big. I don't know if personally that affected me growing up, or like that show in particular, or if it was just it was everywhere. It was in the magazines and everything. So I'm very fortunate that, like I said, I didn't develop an eating disorder, but it was very heartbreaking to hear that, one, of course, the models probably did, and then two, a lot of people watching that looked up to these people or wanted a career in that industry did. So I don't know. It was kind of a weird throwback. It was nice to see, but also like, yeah. I think what I enjoyed about it, honestly, was the fact that Tyra like created and pitched this project. Because as a filmmaker, you're like, how does a show like that get made? And the fact that it was so different for its time, um, that was pretty cool to see. To see that season 1 was just in like a couple of rooms in a hotel, and they were just like scraping together what they could. That was crazy. Season 2, they had a whole soundstage and backdrops and setup and things. So that was cool. Um, then yeah, I don't know. I don't think I have anything else for right now, but yeah, I would love if you want to drop a comment saying what you thought of the documentary. I actually heard there's like another one. Let me see. There's like another documentary done by, I think, a different studio or something. Let's see. It's not Reality Check. Okay, I'm not seeing anything, but I swore I saw a video that said that someone else was making a different documentary on America's Next Top Model. So I don't know. And they didn't have Janice Dickinson on it, which would have been interesting. I would have wanted to hear from her. But yeah, I recommend you check it out. It's only 3 episodes. So let me know what you think, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.